Welcome to the Aro Benaiah show. Today I'm joined by Douglas Carpenter, a CPA and CFA with over 35 years of experience helping business maximize profitability and legally save millions in taxes. He has guided company in budgeting, financial planning, and long-term wealth strategy. I'm excited to explore how his wisdom can help everyday entrepreneurs and trade people build stronger financial foundation. It's really a pleasure having you on the show, Douglas.
Thank you for having me as well.
Yeah, thank you. So, Douglas, what was it like growing up for you?
Well, growing up, honestly, I was had a very entrepreneurial spirit. I probably before I was age, 15, I probably had a dozen failed business attempts.
Woo!
At the time, I was actually investing since I was 10 years old in the market, and I was the youngest stockbroker in history. I got my broker's license at 17 back in 1984. So. Uh,
Wow. Wow,
so
this is
that's
pretty amazing. So, what were those early influences that actually influenced your perception about entrepreneurship? And yeah, you actually get it started at a very young age. What were those influences or mentors that you actually had that influenced you?
you know what? I got into the markets. It's just something I found. I like things that are unsolvable, whether it's science or physics or whatever. I like unsolvable puzzles. Now, where the market is headed is unsolvable. No one really knows. And I like it's something that I like to try to predict and come up with, and that became a fascination to me to learn what the magic secret was. And there is no magic secret, but there are some things you can
Yeah,
follow, both in the stock market and in personal business when you're running a business. Things that help you
yeah.
move that along and guide you.
Wow. So, you actually make reference of the fact that at very young age, you start a whole lot of business that got failed. What was those couple of business you actually get started that you didn't get right that got failed?
Oh goodness, you know what? I'm almost embarrassed to say what they are. I had a, I was going, when I was 8 years old, I was going to grow bonsai trees and pot them and sell them. That was one, great idea. It was all kinds. I'd find, stuff in that I could resell, and I'd buy them, and then I'd wind up getting stuck with half the inventory, but yeah, that's just just the way it would work. But I tried a million different things. I tried selling buttons. I tried selling jewelry. I tried selling bumper stickers. I tried, but finally, and all of that was good because after about, maybe my first 15 years of life, after that, it started to work. Some things weren't wildly successful, but they started to make a little bit of money, and you grow and you learn. And today, every business I run and start is successful.
Wow, this is amazing. Will you say you getting it right successful at after age 15, after a whole lot of them didn't get right? Will you say those failure actually taught you a whole lot of things that actually make it to start being successful? What will you say in respect of that?
What made the difference in
Yeah,
success?
yeah,
Is that
owing to you went through the period of failure thing, it seems you figured it out and became successful. So what have those experience that those failure taught you that make you see things
you know
differently?
you know what? It's a bunch of things, but what it is, it's the experience that you get, and with each one you learn something. So, for instance, okay, you decide tomorrow, and I'll give you a very basic example. I'm going to start a business, great, and you're going to write something to someone, and you realize you don't have a logo. Well, you're going to go get a logo.
Yeah.
Where do you go to get a logo? Well, and by the way, today you Google it. Back then, it wasn't that simple. You had to figure out what printer does this and how do you get the graphics done. And it was a lot more back then. But you know what? Today it's a lot easier. But it's still the same fundamental question. And then you come down to there are other things. You don't want to just set up your business. You have to get licensed. You have to
Yeah.
formally set up a business. In most instances, sometimes you don't have to. But if you're operating under a different name, you do. You have to register the name. There's taxes that may be involved. There's certificates that you may have to have. These are things that you start to learn along the way. And, you bump into these as you try and, businesses don't succeed. But eventually, those basics you get down. So you just go into the business and you do things. There's things that just happen. Then you realize, you know what? Business comes really down to three things. Any major business comes down to payroll, it comes down to cost of goods sold, and it comes down to sales. Those are your three components that you got to focus on. This is not something you know when you're in high school,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
when you're running a business,
Yeah. Owing to
those are your three
experience.
areas.
Yeah.
So,
Amazing. Amazing. So how did you first get into accounting, and what kept you passionate about it over the years?
becoming a stockbroker at 17 is what got me into accounting. I'll tell you why. Because I hated it so much. I really disliked being a broker. A broker is another name for, in my opinion, for a salesman. And I want to help people, do well, but you don't make money when you do that. You churning them and turning their portfolio is how you make money. That wasn't me. It wasn't what I could do. So I wouldn't be successful as a broker. And I realized that when I was in college. The good thing was I had my broker's license in high school. During college, I was working as a broker and realized I didn't want to do that. So I changed my major. The reason it was either finance. There were three majors I considered: finance, computers, or accounting. Computers I've always been good with, but I didn't necessarily want to stick to that. And the way I looked at finance was an accountant could always go into finance, but someone in finance can't go into accounting. So I figured accounting would get those bases covered, and that's what I did. I majored in accounting, got a CPA, and then became a chartered financial analyst after that.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. So you have been in business for over 35 years. Looking back, what stand out as a turning point in your career?
The turning points in my career, honestly, were the long shots that I took. The things that may not appear to work, or I just don't. Normally, the way I work is I don't necessarily do it the way other people do it. I like to blaze trails. I like to do things differently, and very often when you do things differently, they don't work,
Yeah.
and that's okay. But you don't need. As long as you don't fail 10 out of 10, you only have to succeed 1 out of 10. And that's all it takes. So go ahead, do things the way, that you want to do them. And you learn, of course, when they don't work, learn from that. But it's very important to try things that are different. I think the turning points in my career, and I can think of many that, but some in particular, where I just went out and did things differently and did things people said it wouldn't work that way, but you know what, it does.
Wow, wow. Amazing, amazing, amazing. It's the fact that you're able to start doing things differently and learning from the experience as you go. And those outstanding things that actually brought into being. So you have saved clients over 250 million in taxes. Can you actually share stories that capture how impactful the right strategy can be?
The question is, what strategies or what?
Yeah, let me
The,
let me go over it again. I said you have saved a client over 250 million in taxes. Uh, can you share stories that capture how impactful the right strategy can be?
Sure. Extremely so. It's first of all the tax laws. I focus on U.S. tax laws, and they are mind-bogglingly complicated. There's about 29,000 pages to it. I will admit I have not read all of them, but I'm familiar with all the important aspects. And the thing is, I think everybody misses something. I mean, I have not reviewed anybody's tax return ever and not found something when I was looking for it. I do a lot of tax returns. You have to engage with, it's a separate engagement to do the tax analysis. But if you do that, I'll dig through all the areas that that can give you tax breaks. In a business, I can do personal returns as well, but most fruitful are the business returns, and it's everything from the basics. Sometimes your tax preparer misses things. Well, you don't tell them. Or worse, they don't ask, and or you're not doing it right. I see this a lot too. There's improper documentation, things like that. It's not going to bother you at all until you get audited. And then when you get audited, you've got big problems. Whereas you really shouldn't have them, because if you had the right documentation, it's not a problem. I've had several of returns audited that we've done. We've never had an adjustment on them. We had good documentation. An audit's nothing to be afraid of, as long as you did it right, as long as you did it in your belief correctly. And if you didn't, or something's wrong, they'll make an adjustment. Not a big deal. But you know what? If you document everything the right way and you do it, there's nothing to be afraid of. But what we do to save people is to look at the different things that they can do, the different entities that they can have. Sometimes it's more advantageous to have an S corp as opposed to a partnership. Depends on where you're located. In New York City, in some instances, a partnership is better than S corp. An S corp is subject to a certain type of tax, whereas a partnership has a different type of tax that's lower. And these are the kind of things that you want to know as you go into business. And once you've done your business, know all the different, I'll say loopholes, but what I'm going to say are the right way to follow the tax. There's an old saying, billionaires don't pay taxes. They do. Lots of billionaires. They pay lots of tax. The distinction here is billionaires don't overpay their taxes.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing, amazing. The fact that you just said they don't overpay their tax. I just remember Rich Dad and Poor Dad and how they analyze everything that's in there, and it just speaks volumes to how the billionaires actually more like walk around taxes so that they could actually pay duty for everything they actually get to do. So, many of my listeners are trade people and small business owner. What are some of the most common financial mistakes you see them making?
The most common mistakes I'm going to see are mismanagement of cash flow or not understanding their cash flow. That's pretty basic, but it happens all the time. An example might be a construction company. They get a big job, wonderful, but they've got to plan out the cost of materials and the cost of labor before they get paid. And then they find that their client's a little short on cash and they're not getting paid for another 90 days or so. And then things start to run low. You got to anticipate all kinds of things. It's important. I recommend people to have the rule of thumb always used in my past is 2 weeks of operating capital as cash. So whatever your expenses are over a 2-week period, that should be the cash you have in the bank. If you can do it, that's good. And 6 more weeks of credit line, whether it's money in some account that you have, a rich uncle, a line of credit from the bank, which is probably your best bet, something like that. But you should have about 6 weeks worth of credit. And then judge what, if you have special projects coming up, make sure you can finance them. But the biggest singular thing I see is business owners short on cash and having real difficulties with that. And then some of them have to do the absolute worst thing possible. That's merchant funding. And that is when you sell your sales in advance of receiving them, and you'll pay interest rates upwards of 50%.
Wow, wow, this is really key, and the fact that you make reference of a whole lot of them mismanage their funds owing to how they actually more like structure everything that's in there, and it really speaks volumes to structure speak volumes when it comes to how this thing actually work. You have actually mentioned budgeting as key profitability. How can a simple budget transform small business?
Yeah, I love budgeting. It's one of my favorite things to do because you get to predict the future. There's two ways of budgeting, and one is for a very small business, and then when you start to get to be a little bit bigger, budgeting becomes more and more important. The small budgeting, basically, what you're going to do is take a look at your next 12 months, the 12 months out, and put a budget together, which is basically what you think you do. There's a great way to start that budget, and that is to answer this question. Everything will remain exactly the same as this year, except for what's different. Now, it sounds kind of academic, but start with what you did this year. Take this year's template, move it over to next year and say, okay, what on every line of that is changing next year? What am I going to do to change? And the benefit here is, okay, if your sales aren't high enough, well, what are you going to do to change that? Well, maybe I'll advertise more. Well, guess what? Now your budget line for advertising is going to increase, but hopefully your sales will too. What are your targets for sales? I want to grow sales 10%. Now, of course, it's not going to happen the day you start your advertising. So 2 months before you put that in, you're going to have your advertising go up, and then your sales will go up. That's your budget. Now, if you miss your budget never changes, by the way. Once it's done, you're done. That stays. You're going to have forecasts, which means every 3 months you look at your budget, you go, oh, you know what? I didn't get that. Or I got a big project. I'm going to add that in. But that doesn't change your budget. It becomes a forecast change. What you always want to compare is the budget you put together against the actual that takes place, and then analyze why was there a difference. Very
Wow.
beneficial way to do it.
Wow, this is really, really amazing. It's the fact that you make reference of a whole lot of things you could actually look differently when it comes to profitability. That budgeting actually speak volumes of what the futures of the company actually hold. and the fact that when you actually more like budget, right, in terms of what and what is being needed, it's at the end of the day, it actually help in the projection of what the company could make per quarter, and you actually more like even checking it every now and then to know what and what trajectory is actually more like going on. It just speaks volume that, yeah, beyond just doing your job, you should actually more like take some time out to actually look at trajectory of where the company is going to and how you could actually achieve the particular budget you're actually looking forward to. Yeah, thank you so much. So what do you say to entrepreneurs who feel like accounting and tax planning are too complicated or only for big businesses?
No, they're not. A bigger business is going to take a budget to another level. And what a bigger business will do is they'll be looking at different departments, asking managers what they believe goes into that. This is the first time I did a budget. I was a CFO for a public company for 12 years. And the first year that I went in there was to do a budget. They had never done a budget before. They'd just gone public. They'd just been acquired by a public company. And so they had to do this process. And my senior management absolutely hated the idea until they did one, and then after that, it was like their favorite time of the year.
Yeah.
But what it is I called all the salespeople and I said, "So what are you going to do this year?" He says, "Oh, I'm going to grow sales 25%." That was usually the answer. And I'd say, "Okay, how are you going to do that?" And usually there was this deer in the headlights stare that no one's ever asked me that before, and the question is, okay, so I should put you down for zero because you have no idea how you're going to grow this business. And now you say, well, I'm going to go to a new convention and I'm going to meet, okay, all right, let's work on that. Let's develop that. When are you going to do that? Okay, April. Let's put that on your calendar. So April, you're booked. Let's put some money against that because it's going to cost money to send you that, et cetera, et cetera. You start to work this up. And then all your salespeople start to get plans. They start to put together planning. And so do the managers. And you get targets, people who do purchasing. How are you going to save money? If you can purchase, if you can save 2%. We had a restaurant that we were working with, and the woman who owns it, we did a budget for her, and she had a purchasing manager. She gave him a deal here that if he could lower purchasing costs by 2%, she'd give him a $10,000 bonus at the end of the year. Okay. We went through the whole year. Guess what? Their purchasing costs were down 4%.
Wow.
That saved her hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you know what? She did the right thing. She gave him a $20,000 bonus.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Wow.
so yeah.
This is really, really amazing when it comes to budgeting, taxes, and everything when it concerns business. Because a whole lot of entrepreneurs run with the ideas of, if I can do the job, why do I need to budget? Why do I need to look forward to tasks? Why do I need to actually more like set structure? Why do I need to plan? And the fact that the stories you just give example just show volume to if business does not actually plan in respect of taxes, budgeting, and everything, definitely they're actually planning to fail. And this just really, really speak volume to it because business at the end of the day is towards making profits, and you have to plan for the profits to come around, or else you think business is moving forward, not just knowing that you're just accruing losses here and there. And this really
Yes.
speak volume to it. So when it comes to tax, what are some misconceptions that keep business owner from saving money legally?
What are some of the things that keep business owners from
Yeah,
saving money?
yeah,
You know what?
some misconception.
Okay, first of all, a lack of time. Every business owner I know is pretty busy.
Yeah,
And that's one, and a lack of focus. And I don't mean focus as in but a lack of focus on the right things. I've seen people, a restaurant we were working with does $10 million a year in business, big restaurant, pretty thing. We had suggested that they upgrade technology. So, well, how much is that going to cost? About $100 a month. It'll make all your wait staff their life much easier. Okay, $100 a month. I can't do that. That's focused on the wrong thing.
yeah,
You got to focus on the right things. The three things I said to focus on already were sales, Cost of sales and payroll. Those are your three things. Yeah, there's some other things down there we could look at once in a while. But you know what? Don't be afraid to spend money to make money. That's another thing that people are very, they don't invest in their own business. Accounting, by the way, proper accounting is an investment. I'm not a, maybe if you want to get it done cheaply, yeah, you're spending money. But if you do it right and you get the right accountant, it's an investment. It's an investment that's going to pay.
Wow, 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 amazing. I think the fact that just analyzing that, what are those things business auto spend money in, which is our sales, our cost of sales and payrolls, and having this as the bottom line, we're actually more like guide business and actually making correct decision when it comes to doing things differently. Can you give us an example of simple tax saving habits that a younger trade people could actually apply right now?
You know what? The first thing is make sure you're getting all the deductions that you're supposed to get. You have a home office, you should certainly deduct it. Don't be afraid. I've heard many, many times people say, I don't want to get audited. Yeah, but you use a room in your house for your business. Yeah, but I don't want to get audited. Let's document, do it correctly. You're entitled to we use a formula. Um, take what you're entitled to. That's number one. Number two is know what's available to you. Talk to people like me, like a financial planner, like other CPAs. Although, quite frankly, I know people who go to those people and don't get the right advice. But hopefully, you do. You get someone that's very good, and they can direct you. But get as much information as you can. You'd be surprised at how many simple things people miss that are available to you. Um, they'll do a 401k, but they don't realize they can also do an HSA, a health savings account. They can offer cafeteria plans to their workers, and it's a benefit to them, and it saves them on FICA tax. There's a lot of stuff out there that just businesses miss that are low hanging fruit, easy to do, don't cause any problems, but they just do. And part of the reason is not because people are unengaged or they don't care. It's so complicated and there's just so much. Not only do we have federal tax, but you got 50 states out there.
Yeah.
You know, and heaven forbid you're an e-commerce business with multiple locations, something like that. You're subject to all of those taxes. So
Wow, amazing. Make sure you have a deduction for every of those particular things and know what is available to you. And I think those things are very, very key when it comes to the habits that one actually help to imbibe when it comes to our saving money legally, uh, doing it the right way. So, how can apprentices or younger workers learn from experienced business owner about handling finance the right way?
well, you know what? I think it's important. I think it's important for anyone to apprentice in any type of business. You need to do it from someone who's already done it. In just about most things. I mean, maybe there's a few that aren't, but that's pretty important. As far as the financial aspect, I say get the right advisors. I don't try to, install windows. I don't do HVAC. I don't operate on people because I do accounting. That's what I do. And on the flip side, I run businesses. That's what I know how to do. I know how to make businesses profitable. I know how to run them. Why would you think that you can do what you do and do what I do? That's I get the understanding that you think you know how to do it, and you might be good enough at it, but you're not optimizing the situation.
Wow, wow. Wow, get the right advisor. And I think this is very, very key because every business have its own peculiarity and having tribes of mentors in various sector who are experts in those particular field, it's really, really key in getting the balance and making most of every business decision you actually make alongside the journey because most times every situation you pass through as a business, other business have passed through before and they were able to overcome it. And having those advisors around it really, really speak volume towards overcoming that particular challenge and towards solving the problem. Because yes, there's not much you can do compared to a whole lot of person who dedicate their life solely towards solving that particular problem. Definitely is going to be way, way different compared to you that just attempting it just once. Yeah, thank you. So you have worked with the restaurants business too. What lessons from the industry can trade people apply in running their own?
In the restaurant business, what
Yeah,
um, the one thing I mean, the one thing about that business in particular, it's a very tough business.
yeah.
There's very high volumes. There are a million things that can go wrong. Um, I say you're one bad clam from going out of business. But that's so that is it's there's just so much, and I got to say that one of the things I talk to my clients about when they're engaging us is, do you want to spend your time looking in the books or running your restaurant? And that's true for any business. Do you want to spend your time doing what I'm supposed to be doing, or do you want to actually run the business and do what you're really good at? And how much is that worth to you? But the big thing I find, in that particular business, is generally they're very good at what they do, but they're not very good at running businesses in general. I found some restaurateurs that are fantastic at it, but there aren't that many that there. And it's just, it takes so many different skills to run a good restaurant, a good hotel, or so many. People skills are great if you have them. You have to treat your customers well. You have to order stuff. You have to know how to fight with vendors sometimes. There's so many different aspects to it. And let me do what I do. You do what you do.
And I think just the way you make reference of it, restaurants is very more like a very dynamic business to do because it involves a whole lot of expertise at various ends to actually get the job right. And the bottom line sometimes is, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, you can get one single thing wrong, everything can turn upside
It's
down.
one of the hardest businesses out there.
Yes, yes, because it's the fact that it's a business that you pour in your all, and at the end of the day, if you didn't make sale that particular day, your all is gone. so so it's really really key, and the fact that you make reference of these that most times they are good at what they do, but they don't understand the other aspects. It really speak volume to then actually more like seeking the right advisor towards actually making a better decision in scaling and working uh, better for that particular business. So, for those hoping to grow their trade business, what role does financial literacy play in scaling successfully?
In scaling successfully, there's a thing that is very important. That is, do one first and be successful. So everybody who opens up a coffee shop is going to be the next Starbucks. That's and you know what? Get a successful template. Get a customer. Get and do them well. Do that, and then you can replicate it a million
Yeah.
times. But get your template down and do one first, and do it very, very well, and perfect it. If you're going to make mistakes, great, make it on that first one. Learn. Your second one will be better than your first. That's the way it works. But if that first one's successful, then imagine how that second one's going to be.
Wow, wow, amazing. I think it's the fact that you make reference of learning on the job here is very, very key because a whole lot of things about business is not something you can learn on school. It has to be, most of them has to be hands-on experience, being that the successful of one can lead to the successful of many. And you trying to figure it out just the way you did when you actually started out. You feel at a whole lot of business, which taught you better lessons of what to do differently and how to actually more like stay true and become successful at what you do, which basically means most times business either it fails or it get better. It's just a learning process and you will definitely make it work if you stay long at it in making it better and figuring out better way to actually get it done. So what advice will you give to younger entrepreneurs about separating personal and business finance?
Um, in separating business and personal, well, the two are linked together. When you do a budget, part of that budget, or thinking of it, especially for a small business owner, is okay. How much money do you need to live? The business may generate a cash flow, but is it enough for you? And what can you draw from that business? It's important that you get paid. It's important that you draw from that business. And you want to make sure that it's enough for it to be rewarding. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of things you got to take responsibility for. You need to be rewarded for that. You should be. You want to make sure that, again, within those budgets. Also, the business and personal are very linked financially. Everything that the business generates, depending on the type of entity, most entities will flow through to you unless you're C Corp. But even then, there are ramifications that affect you personally. You pay yourself out of that business, that has a tax effect on you. Business makes or loses money, that has a tax effect on you. How you invest from that business. You're going to open up a 401k, you're going to have profit sharings, however you decide to do that. These are all going to have personal effects on you as well, from your financial side to your tax side. And if you have 3 kids that are starting college, you might want to make different decisions. They're coming up in 2 or 3 years. You might want to make different decisions on how you invest in your own business. Are you building enough cash to do that? Or do you want to put an investment in now and grow the business? Or do you just want to keep it status quo? But the two are definitely not separate. There's a saying I like to say that, there's a saying that's out there that, a dog starts to take a look of its own, start to take on the look of its owner. So does a business. A business takes on the look of its owner. You get a certain feel. When you meet a business owner, you can tell right away what that business is going to be like just from meeting them.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Thank you very much for that explanation. And finally, Douglas, if you had to leave us with one key piece of financial wisdom for the next generation of trade people and entrepreneurs, what will it be?
You know what? I'm gonna narrow that down a little bit and give and offer to the listener the same advice that I offer every client after our quarterly call, and that is, what are you going to do different next quarter that you didn't do this quarter?
Mm,
That I think I usually don't expect an answer. I just leave them with that, and I say, consider it's a rhetorical question, but answer it yourself. Because if you don't do anything different, everything stays the same.
yeah, yeah. Wow, wow. This is very, very key. And I think in particular what I said, unexamined life is not worth living. And the fact that you make reference of looking at the current thing you are doing and looking at what you could do differently to make a different outcome just speak volume to you sitting down with the numbers you have in there and the various strategy I've taken before time and seeing what can you do differently towards making better choice and better result. And it really speaks volume to, yes, at the end of the day, business takes the shape of the owner. So the owner must sit down and actually look into the book and the numbers to see better way of actually engaging things. Yeah, so it's really, really been a pleasure having you on the show. I must say, and thank you so much, Douglas, for all the lessons. So, Douglas, it has been an incredible eye opening, and thank you for breaking down complex financial ideas into practical step, and that everyday entrepreneurs can apply. To my listener, remember, understanding your numbers isn't just about us. It's about building a stronger, more sustainable business. If you would like to connect with Douglas, you can find him through his website or LinkedIn. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep building your future. It's really been a pleasure having you. And also, before we go out, Douglas, where can my audience learn more about you? What platform and how can they do business with you?
I'm available on LinkedIn. They can also look for us. Our website, we have a few different connections, but Books for Hospitality. That's books, the number 4, hospitality.com. Although we service all businesses, we have a very high-end specialty in the hospitality area, which is why our website is like that.
Yeah.
It's called that, but that is, we do all small businesses.
Wow, amazing. So definitely I'm going to include that on the show notes for my audience to reach out to you. Once again, it's really, really been a pleasure.